I wholeheartedly believe that parents are the children's primary teachers.
There seems to be less listening from the school than there is sort of educating the parent.
To be the one to say, I don't have all the answers, because I'm not sure what you want, but we're going to figure it out together. And that's what families are going to remember 5 years later when they're recommending your center to somebody else.
I sometimes feel that as schools, we forget from the parents' perspective that they are looking for that as well.
It's not the disruption that breaks the trust. I think it's the silence around it. So families can absorb a lot, I think, if they feel informed, respected, and included.
There may be families that when this change happens, their tendency and their personality is to say, there we go again, my trust got broken. Can we be there with acceptance even when that comes up?
Every morning, a parent hands you their child, the one they would do anything for, and they walk away. If you think about it, that is one of the most vulnerable things a human being can do. As a mother who's had to do this myself and found myself in my office at 7:45 in the morning, holding back tears that I didn't want my child or everyone else at work to see after having dropped off my child because I had to, and hoping and trusting that they'll be cared for in a way I would have if I could have stayed, is to be 100% honest a lot. We talk a lot about building partnerships with families, but I think we sometimes skip over just how much we're asking of them. Before we send our newsletters, learning stories, daily communications, share our curriculum, talk about our events, a parent has already made a huge act of faith in us. And what we do with it matters so much. So today, we wanted to talk about what trust in the early years actually looks like when we take it seriously. What it takes to earn it, what it costs when it breaks, and what do genuine partnerships with parents actually look like? Welcome to the Early Years podcast, brought to you by the Early Years Academy by ParentUp, your village for the early years. We're here because everyone at ParentUp believes that the adults in the early years ecosystem, so that's the educators, the leaders, the families, they deserve the same level of care and investment and belonging that you pour into the children you serve. I'm your host, Dana Al Qinneh, head of pedagogy at ParentUp. I'm an early years educator, a former center principal, a master trainer in trauma-informed practices, and a mother of 3. Our guest today has spent over 4 decades working alongside families, and not just in the classroom, but from the very beginning of life. Pamela Green is the owner of Ananda Montessori, a Montessori playgroup in Northeast Pennsylvania. She's a consultant and a mentor to teachers, staff, schools, parents worldwide. She's also a Montessori parent and a grandparent herself. Pamela, welcome to the Early Years podcast.
Thank you. It's it's very nice being with you. It's very nice.
I've honestly been looking forward to this podcast ever since we recorded our webinar together, Pamela. We were talking about something foundational in early childhood education, which is trust. What it takes to build it, what happens when it breaks, how can we maintain meaningful parent partnerships?
Well, one of the things in thinking about this was if we are a school and we've entered into an experience where we are sensing or we are knowing that something has happened, where there's a kind of a divide or a separation, one thing that I think is helpful is to step back and look at, as a school, as an administration, how did we get here?
Right.
So if we were in a place where there seems to be less trust or less communication, or that we're getting feedback from the parents in that regard, or we sense it in ourselves, how did we get to the point that we are right now?
Yeah.
as kind of a timeline, and to look at it with a vision that's more curiosity rather than, which is more expansive, rather than looking at as what are we going to do, and perhaps entering into experiences or dynamics where the parent community is seeming as the ones who are at fault, which is what can happen.
Definitely. I think when we start to talk about trust, though, a lot of times what happens is parent satisfaction kind of dilutes that conversation. And so I thought, okay, if we really want to talk about trust, let's start by separating trust from satisfaction. Satisfaction. So a family can think a center is really good. They can believe that the environment is beautiful. Maybe your communication is regular. Your staff is exceptional. But a parent can still not fully trust it. So satisfaction is about the service, whereas trust is something more than that, right? It's about, do you see the children in your care? Do you center their interests? Do you know what your parents want? Are you able to connect with them?
Yes, and also recognizing that the parents also want, and I just remember this as a parent and a grandparent still, but when my children were in my school, that myself as a parent, I wanted to have community, be in community, have a place where I could belong, where I was welcomed, where I could contribute, where I had significance, and to offer opportunities from the beginning where we are in relationship with one another from the beginning, because that's where that is a deep longing in all of us, is to have that. And I sometimes feel that as schools we forget from the parents' perspective that they are looking for that as well.
Right. And I think the last time we had this conversation, we were talking about whether the center calls when small things happen, like before a parent has to come in and ask, and how the system or your environment could feel broken to a parent where they feel like the information is being managed rather than shared. Especially when the center is your primary means of communication as a parent, right? So the children that we entrust to the care of centers, they're mainly pre-verbal, right? So they can't communicate themselves and tell us what they've done on a daily basis. So parents rely almost exclusively on centers then.
They can, but we can also do incorporate other experience such as community meetings and parent group and opportunities for families to join together.
Right.
So those are all, there are so many that can happen, but parent group, community meetings, having open houses, which are not just coming in and being told about what's happening, but for the parents to actually have the opportunity to move through and engage and explore,
Right.
to understand through their own senses and their bodies what my children are experiencing.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll add is to move into a listening posture more than a telling.
Yeah.
And I feel that, I mean, when I work with schools and there are, there's a sense of how can we help parents to understand what's happening here, and those kinds of things. Through the conversation, there seems to be less listening from the school than there is sort of educating the parents. And I don't feel that that's really so much that is what parents want, but they also want something deeper.
Right. And it comes from that mentality of like, this is your comfort zone, right? As a teacher, as an educator, we say your classroom is your kingdom, right? So it's your comfort zone. And as an educator, you're also told you're an expert on everything to do with early childhood. So before a parent even walks through the door, you could see how there's almost this power difference, right? Where the educator knows all, is the specialist, is in their comfort zone, knows where everything is, and kind of the parent is coming in. But hold on, I mean, if we truly believe, that parents are the children's primary teachers, then we wouldn't approach it that way, or we would do what's in our power to make sure that that dynamic is changed. Right?
And as you mentioned, well, my school right now, I have adults in there all the time. So I have parents in the classroom, I have grandparents, I have caregivers. Every class, they're there. So as an educator or as a school, if you can imagine what that's like, it is, it can be quite transformative, and it can also bring up a lot in the guide or the teacher of exactly what you're talking about. The idea of this being my space, and then here I'm inviting all of you in. What is that like? And I feel as a parent, and in respect to parents, that they are the primary teachers of their child. And as educators, that is a really important thing to remember. And to recognize, because the more that we behave, or we have that idea that this is my place and not your place, then there's the kind of the answer. How do we shift that? And it's not going to be, it's not the parent's job to kind of shift that. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay, Pamela, I want to go back there because I wholeheartedly believe that parents are the children's primary teachers, and I want their input, and I want them maybe in my classroom for a bit, but not for the whole day. So you have to walk me through, how do you manage, because I mean, so much comes out here. Okay, firstly, there's boundaries. How do you hold up the same type of boundaries when parents are around the children? What about in terms of like the flow for the day, and the other children? Do they not feel anxious with so many adults in the room? You have to tell me how you make this work.
Well, the way it is that there are classes. So the class that is with the infants is about 90 minutes. Then there are classes that are adult and toddler that are from walking to age 3, and that's 2 hours. And then the adult and child class is 3 hours, so a 3-hour cycle from 9 to noon. Most of the parents at Ananda come 2 or 3 or 4 days a week, so they're there often. For the children at Ananda, for the parents, grandparents, whoever they are, I am guiding the adults as much as I am the child. So that's the intention of these communities, is to offer guidance, for me to be observing, and the adults practice observation as well. And part of observation for me, just as it is when we're observing children, before we would offer any guidance, is to look for readiness within the individual. So readiness within the adult. And they come in with, as I did, come in with all of our own history of being parented, and so the words that come out of that we express are often what was said to us. And for me, over 40 years, I've never seen as much transformation within adults as I have within these classrooms. For the child, so there might be 12 children in the class, there could be 10 adults then. And for the children at Ananda, this is normal. Like, this is life. I call Ananda Montessori practice of living Montessori. So we're in the sort of the fire of the experience. They're within that, and there can be many things that are awakened within the adult that I feel when things rise up in us, it is the time for that to happen. And to be in a community where there's someone to be with you, and where there's acceptance, there's no right or wrong. There is a community of multi-age adults, whether they're it's less chronological age than experience. So they're all helping one another, and there's modeling happening. I train teachers to do this and to create whatever their version is of this. I have a training to do this. And Montessorians who maybe have how many years they've been in it, I hear over and over again, I can be with children. I know how to do that. But to be with adults, to be with parents, that's really hard for me. And what I'll often say is, so what happens within you that allows that experience with the child? What is it like? And they'll explore that, and then I'll say, well, do you think it's possible that because this is coming from you to bring yourself to that experience, that you can also bring yourself to the experience of being with the adults?
Yeah, I love that. And looking inward and reflecting, what is it about the adults that then makes it harder or hard for us? Because we hear that often, right? As educators, like, I can deal with the children, it's just the big people I can't, And where does that come from? Or, I always found that worth diving into. Like, what is it about the adults that trigger you? Is it, their boundaries and you having to share, or embark on a partnership with parents for the child? Do you rather just do it alone? Could that be a reason? Or is it insecurity about you advocating for what's right or appropriate, let's say, for children, but then facing pushback from parents? I don't know. It could be something different for different educators, right? But I love how you say it's worth stop and reflect. Like, where is this coming from? What's in that?
Mm-hmm. Well, the intention is for the deep study of what Maria Montessori called the preparation of the spirit, or the spiritual preparation of the adult. That is the most important thing to me. Whatever I'm doing, if I'm attending a birth, if I am at Ananda, if I am working with schools, if I'm consulting. When I had my large school for decades that did not have parent, infant, and child, the same thing. To really be looking at how can I serve the need in the adult, which is different than the want of the adult. It's different. And one is more short term. Like, I'll give you the answer you want, because then maybe we'll even make you more quiet.
Yeah.
you know? And one is diving into the long term, walking alongside you in your own exploration.
100%. So, Pamela, from your years in Montessori, where families are, they have this deep philosophical investment in the approach, does that shared philosophy make trusting or building trust easier, or does it actually raise the stakes?
Well, the preparation of the environment, we could be indoors or outdoors or wherever, but how we are within ourselves is the most
Yeah.
important thing.
Okay.
So if I want to sit in the seat of, and I sit in the seat as head of school, I sit in the seat as guide, but what does that mean? And an exploration of even defining within ourselves, what does that mean? Does that mean that I know more? Does it mean that you are separate from me? Because if that's what it means, that the first step is that I've separated from myself because I'm seeing you as other. And what I've, over and over again, what I've noticed is that within me anyway, when I do that, then it opens up uh, opportunities for certain dynamics, like authority things, and what you were talking about. At Ananda, it is, in certain ways, well, they've come together into a community where they are going to be invited to practice and to learn and to explore and to be guided. So they've made that decision, even though they may have no idea what it's like. Though they have no idea. So my creating an environment where there's acceptance and there's welcoming
Yeah.
and where it is prepared for both the adult and child, because whatever kind of environment we have, if it's not parent and child, and we're in a school and it's not Montessori, and I come in as an adult, is there a place for me there?
Absolutely.
Literally, is there a place for me to put my things? Is there a room for me to go? Is there a lending library there? Is there all
Yeah.
these comfort measures that we can offer to the adults really make a difference?
Right. So, do you then recommend that centers filter out parents that don't align on their values or their mission?
I never recommend that because we are in a process. We are in a process. And to say that, I would be saying to someone that how you come in is how you are.
Yeah.
You know, that's not respectful.
Yeah.
And when we come into any environment, we are looking to orient ourselves because we're in a sensitive period of order, and
Absolutely.
we're looking to the person, whoever it is, might be the children, and not just the children too. We're looking to them as we come in to find out, where am I? What is this place? Who are you? How do I behave here? Although that's not an important thing. Uh, that has to be process centered.
Exactly. So I know there are some centers who actually pride themselves on saying we're not for you. But I always felt like you can't magically expect to change the sector if you're not willing to do the advocacy work for the sake of the children, right? As you said, it's a partnership. And if I believe a certain practice is what's best for children, I'm going to advocate for that. And let's say a family does walk in and they have very different philosophies. It doesn't mean that I can't try to understand their point of view and where they're coming from in hopes that they also want to understand, you know, what we do and why we do it, and maybe learn something, and maybe they'll want to adapt and change.
And maybe we'll want to adapt,
Yeah,
change. You
yeah,
know, I've always done this over 40 years. When someone's interested in my programs or my school or whatever, they
yeah,
come to visit.
right,
That there are many, as we talked about before, many community events and opportunities for them, but they come to visit with the child. And during that time, it might be during class, which I love. I love for them to come during class. It might be during an open house, uh, but I may be meeting with them afterwards with the adults and just listening to what their experience was like.
right,
And also in observing them during that time, I'm going to be taking notes later on certain things that I observed. So there can be things that we see that we take note of as being different from how things are here, you
right,
know? So there is that balance of observing them and having that discernment, but also recognizing that they're in their process. And we are in our space, as you mentioned earlier, they're coming into an unknown. How can we make this wrong, or how can we offer this as unknowing for them?
right,
And the other thing I'll say is, I've been offering parent groups since 1989,
right,
every month, and sometimes I've had 90 parents at group.
yeah,
Um, those are so essential. And during those groups, which are supportive group models, so you're with your peers, you're with the other adults, we can bring into, they can share their experiences, they can offer questions and reflections and things. But the thing, what you're bringing up in different instances, like I might have a parent group and explore what values are.
yeah,
You know, just an exploration of what is a value, and hearing from them through process if they share what is of value to them in their home.
right,
You know, so there's more merging of the relationship.
absolutely. And what you're talking about is an alignment conversation. So I
Huh?
believe that there's a very big difference between a sales conversation and an alignment conversation. So a sales conversation is about converting the family. So let's be honest, a lot of centers are private, and they need sales conversions so that they can operate and they can run. So those matters. But centers that also value alignment conversations, those are ones that operate very differently. They're the ones that, after they market, let's say, their center, they also discuss or ask parents, what brings you here? What does your child need? What do you need as a parent? And then figure out together how you can be the right fit. And I love how you said it's not about looking for reasons to exclude families, but rather looking for ways where you can actually fit them in, identifying where they may need support, and then offering that support and going from there or growing from there.
Hmm. It's a collaborative model
Yeah,
more than a school and the parents.
yeah,
And we, you know, there may be some schools that's not comfortable. And that's, to me, I always look at discomfort as a good sign. I celebrate that because then it's a message to me that this might be where it's at right now for me.
Right.
I'm uncomfortable with this, okay? So I wonder why that is. And as a school teacher, as everyone, you know, when I had my large school, we would meet together and have conversations just on what does the word parent mean to you? What comes up to you in you around that?
Right.
And all of these things to explore. That can be our preparation
Yeah.
even before the parents come. Can we do work
Exactly.
within our community to come into more of what you're talking about as an alignment
Right.
that is our self-work?
100%. So, in your center, then, Pamela, what does the first conversation with a new family look like? What are you listening for?
Well, I'm open. I've always been open all year long since 1981. So it's, as long as there's space in a class, there's ongoing enrollment. The first thing that happens normally is they look at the website or they hear about me, and then we will talk by phone, and then we will have if they would like, they will come to visit Ananda. And that, I always say to my students in training, the moment a family walks in the door of your
Yeah,
space, this is your opportunity to, in natural ways, to
100%.
model
Yeah.
uh, graciousness,
Yeah.
you know, to model and to also be very sensitive to that, to those adults and those children. You know, I'm not someone that has, I've done this in the past, but I don't do it anymore, where you go right away and you shake hands. I'm sensitive to who this person is,
Right.
and I will say, here is a place for you to hang up your things. If you would like, you can place this here so that you can, all the space at Ananda is open for the adult and the child. Give them a little bit of information where the restroom is. This is where you can put your things, and then to just come in. Now, prior to the coming to visit, we would have talked on the phone about what is needed for the visit, which is just you. You know, if there are some self-care items for your child, you can bring those, certainly. But
Mhm.
you're coming to visit, and the children, the minute they get there, they want to just go
Good.
because it's open. And that, even in that moment of coming in the door,
Right.
that offers opportunity where a parent may say, stop.
Mhm.
You haven't been invited or whatever. And I usually will kneel down to the child and say, I can see that you're wanting to move. Would you like to go in?
Mhm.
You may.
Beautiful.
And just there, I'm modeling a different way, perhaps. And then there are the other people that have been around for a while more, who have each one of them have been in the same position of coming for the first time. So they are introducing themselves and they are welcoming and they are also observing. But I don't have like someone new comes in, I'm going to go and I'm going to greet them and I'm shake their hand and all of these things. I move from the sensitivity of the person.
Yeah.
We also have it, we're open in the summer for a summer term, but when the
Mhm.
school year starts, we have an orientation meeting. The first parent group is an orientation meeting, which is talking more about observation, many different aspects, and they also have an observation journal that's given to them, which has guidelines, and I think it's guidelines and essentials, which is just very not loosely, but to not make rules
Yeah.
around, that when children come in here at Ananda, we allow children to do as much as is possible and to step in as little as is necessary. This may not make sense to you, but you will begin to see it.
Yeah.
And then I offer guidance and things. So they just kind of come in and, you know, for most children, they've not been in an environment that is free in that way.
Right.
And most adults haven't been in an environment that's free in that way. So,
I was gonna say most of us haven't.
right.
Um, I'd love to talk about what happens when centers lose control of the outcome. So you've talked about this
Uh,
beautiful experience where parents come in, you guys have aligned, you've modeled, they see what their children are getting, and they've signed up for that, right?
mm-hmm.
But I think every center will eventually face a moment where they can't deliver what families were initially promised. So, what happens to trust in those moments? And I think this question is comes most alive right now globally because what we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing in various parts of the world, including the region I work in right now in the GCC, is that families have paid for a service that through no fault of the center, no fault of the family, looks completely different than what was agreed on. So in the UAE, centers have switched to online learning, while parents paid initially for in-person sessions, of course. And the centers are caught in the middle between regulatory decisions they didn't make and parental expectations, that they did commit to. What happens in that gap, Pamela, where trust is truly so, yeah, where trust is truly tested, I think. Um,
Well, transparency is really important, always
yeah,
to me, to be transparent. And if that were happening for me, I would have a community meeting as soon as possible, inviting all of the parents in the community. And those can be, so it's not like people feel it's an emergency that it hasn't happened before. Oh my gosh, there's a community meeting. What does that mean? Community meetings are times to just gather together and then maybe afterwards share food.
right,
It's just like that, but to share, this is a school, to share what's
right,
happening, and this is what this is what's going on, and as a school, these are the requirements right now.
right.
And so to speak to those and then hear from the parents about that is much different from it happening and then it feels like as a parent it's happening to me rather than I am, it's we're in community together, let's say. We've decided to be in collaboration. So this is happening not just with the parents, but also with the staff and for the school and everyone. So
Right.
why not talk about it together, which doesn't mean all the details and all those things, but then how do we move forward in this?
Yeah.
And for me as the head of school, I would consider, because it's different and you're not in person anymore, how that's going to happen with very young children. I would I when my school was shut down for 5 months during COVID, I didn't have online classes at all. I had online twice a month parent
Right.
group to support them.
Right.
So to look at even for them to understand what would that look like, And then the other thing that for me, honestly, because it's that different for whatever time frame it is, I would look at a difference in tuition
Right.
and reflection of it. But the biggest thing to me is in transparency and in having a community meeting so that, and that may all be happening, I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, I love how you said it's, to make the parent feel like it's not happening to them, it's happening with them.
Mhm.
And, that could, that could just be saying, here's what we're offering instead. We know this isn't what you signed up for. Here's what we cannot control. Here's what we can. Does this work for you? How can we support you and your family through this? What would you like to see? And that conversation is hard, right? Because it's so much easier to just say, oh, it is what it is, and this is what we have, you know? But to actually go through the planning process, as you said, with parents, that conversation is hard and it requires vulnerability from leadership to be the one to say, I don't have all the answers because I'm not sure what you want, but we're going to figure it out together. And that's what families are going to remember 5 years later when they're recommending your center to somebody else.
Mhm.
It's not the disruption that breaks the trust. I think it's the silence around it. So families can absorb a lot, I think, if they feel informed, respected, and included. I can in my workplace. I think if I'm included in discussions, if I'm respected, if my voice is heard, it doesn't mean they're doing what I want them to do, but I'm getting a say. I mean, I feel like I could absorb a lot. But when it's not, and it's the opposite, you could see how, trust just unravels. And it's really hard to rebuild trust. We've talked about this before.
Yeah, and it may be if you come about it in the way that I'm talking about,
Yeah,
I would not throw trust out the window, but
yeah,
look at new words that can emerge,
yeah,
new experiences that can emerge where perhaps we've been listening to the parents then and we may be freaked out with what's happening with us. If we're listening to them and we're in talking together, even when we are not sure about what's happening, we can hear from them perhaps some ideas.
yeah,
And then they feel more of that sense of belonging. They feel more of that sense of community. And then trust is a process. And if we've been in that process of trust all along, and that's been a felt essence, then there may be families that when this change happens or when any change happens,
yeah,
their tendency in their personality is to say, there we go again, my
yeah,
trust got broken. So then you're having personality stuff come up in parents. Can we be with them there? Can we be there with acceptance even when that comes up? And because there will be things. And the other thing I'll say is, at Ananda, one of the truly big opportunities is because we're in there all the time, is for the parents and all the adults to see us as human. Are we willing to be seen? Are we
yeah.
willing to be vulnerable? Are we willing to show ourselves when we feel that we have maybe made a mistake? All of those things. So for a school, there might be, in each person this might happen, but in the school as a whole being almost, there might be awakenings of feeling like we've done something wrong. How do we solve this? All of that And
Yeah.
that will make the separation even greater.
Right. I love how you mentioned something a little bit earlier about inviting parents in for like a community circle, and you said not in a way that's alarming. And I think as a parent, if I was a parent at your center, Pamela, I wouldn't be alarmed because family or community circles is something that you do on a regular basis, right? You have this really strong family engagement. So during crisis, when you did call for a family circle or a community circle, I'm not going to be alarmed. It's something I've seen and done before. But I think for the centers that haven't implemented that yet, to look into doing that. It's so much easier to do these things as a preventative measure than to try and do it afterwards as a reactive
Yeah, and I
form.
mean, you can bring it as maybe you haven't that hasn't happened before,
Yeah.
and just you use
Use
language
the language
that is more
that is
like,
more
we have made a decision that because we are community based, we have to start somewhere.
Right.
So because we are community based, that we want to get together to share with you what is happening.
Yeah.
It can just begin there. And then for us as the school and the administration to know as much as we know about what we plan to offer, right? And also what the timeline might be on that if it's known at all. And again, to be looking at the tuition to see if there are ways that that's adjusted.
Right.
All of that's proactive before you meet together.
Exactly.
You know,
And
yeah.
yeah. And I think this is where I want to encourage the use of applications like the Parent app, by the way, like to use it to build
Right.
relationships with parents. You can schedule events on there. You can share pictures on a regular basis, and those really small personalized moments that you could update parents with. So Parent App was actually built by the founder and CEO because he wanted to be more involved in his preschooler's life. He wasn't satisfied with the once a week photo updates, and he knew that where technology was, he could use it to leverage better connection opportunities. And yeah, I think that it's great that we have something like this, and we could definitely use it to stay connected to parents. We're in their pockets, right? Like if they have the app on the phone, and we're in their pockets. And again, these interactions can build trust, or they can tear away at them.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing, and it makes that relationship. I'm not here in the classroom, yet I can be seeing what's happening and feel included. I think always coming from the understanding that parents want to feel included, they wish to contribute, they wish to belong, and even in circumstances where something different happens, imagining in our minds how can the parents contribute during this time to really make it not so much all the school's job because again the adults, the parents, we have wonderful ideas that we haven't even imagined yet.
Right.
It's really I mean, for me anyway, I've learned so much from the parents that what it requires in me is a letting go. It's part of discernment. One of the definitions of discernment is to know what is not yet known. To know what is not yet known. And I think of that every day before class. I think of that in the morning. I think of that when I'm driving to a birth. To know what is not yet known, which moves us into coming into more presence
Yes.
with ourselves and then also with others. And, there's a lot to explore.
Right.
There's a lot to explore. Um, but having the, you know, I just feel that if we have environments where the adults coming in see and feel and sense that it's their place as well, then when these things happen,
Right.
it's their place as well still.
Exactly. And it's not happening to them, but it's happening with them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And and we can go in our heads and in our past histories will can rise up too around I have disappointed, I have broken trust, I
Yeah.
have no one will want this, all these things. If we're in that state within ourselves, that's going to be expressing
Yeah.
too.
Absolutely. Then, Pamela, what are the most common reasons then that we end up there, or we're not able to bypass that? I want to remove the blocks.
Hmm. Well, I think first doing the separate from the, not separating the parents, but as work within the community of adults within the school to
Okay.
do work together, self work
Yeah.
together, group work together around. I used to have weekly group meetings with my staff along these ways, not to talk about pedagogy and these things like that, but to talk about what's happening within them, to give space for that and to be listening.
Right.
I think that's vital,
Abs-
and it doesn't happen often.
No, because it takes a lot of work, right? But I mean, I think we all, from listening to your words of wisdom, I think we all have a blueprint, shall we say, for starting to build these trusting relationships with the adults and the children and our colleagues as well. So I think everything we talked about is applicable to the whole ecosystem, the early years ecosystem, really. Pamela, this conversation is exactly what I hoped it would be. Thank you so much for the depth that you bring, not just from your years in education, but from the fact that you sat in so many different chairs: educator, administrator, parent, grandparent, doula. And it really, really shows. You're able to address this topic from a 360-degree lens, and we really, really appreciate it. To everyone listening, if this episode landed with you, share it with a colleague, a director, or an educator who needs to hear it. Trust is the infrastructure of everything we build in early years, so the more that we talk about it honestly, the better our sector gets. I'm Dana Al Qinneh. This is the Early Years podcast by the Early Years Academy, your village for the early years. Thank you so much, Pamela, and we'll see you in our next episode.
You're very welcome. Good to be with you.